Thank you. And if drivers of recent inflation are supply chain issues and potential areas of underinvestment, do you think that these issues are best resolved through investments making that supply chain more resilient or higher interest rates?
Well, if we see things that are temporary or transitory and that should move through and go away because they're associated with an event, the opening of the economy, then it would be inappropriate for us to tighten policy, which really has the point of which is to slow down economic activity and slow the recovery. It would be inappropriate. It's a difficult judgment to make, though, is the thing.
Thank you. And recently, the BLS reported that the first 3 months of 2021 were the best quarter of wage growth since at least 2001. Now, my concern, to be frank, is that a misplaced diagnosis playing out with inflation could cause the Federal Reserve to prematurely raise rates and constrain wage and employment gains that have been beneficial to millions of Americans. This means that, if we do take that step back, millions of Americans, especially marginalized communities, will be left with limited opportunities to be employed at an adequate and livable wage. In fact, the FOMC is projecting multiple interest rate increases before the end of 2023 and before they project achieving the pre-pandemic unemployment rate. And at the June FOMC meeting, the median FOMC members' projection of the longer run unemployment rate was about 4%, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Now, yet before triggering the pandemic, the unemployment rate reached, or rather before the pandemic, the unemployment rate reached 3.5% without triggering inflation, correct?
That's right, yeah.
And in fact, in 2019, despite some pickup in wage growth, especially at the bottom, there didn't appear to be signs of the economy overheating. And as you said in November 2019, that the benefits of long expansion are only now reaching many communities and that there's plenty of room to build on the impressive gains achieved so far. So if indeed there was still room to expand in the months before COVID, that suggests that with time, the economy can return to a trend of GDP and employment above the one it was experiencing before the crisis. Now, do you believe this to be the case? Do you believe that the longer run implies that 3.5% is too low? And do you think that we will be able to reach lower unemployment and higher labor force participation levels than the pre-pandemic ones?
Oh, I have every reason to think, and I do think that we'll be able to get back to 3.5% unemployment. Participation is very much affected by the age of the population, so that's a question. I'm quite sure we can get to high levels of participation again.
Okay, thank you. And to disaggregate a little bit of kind of this line between monetary and fiscal policy, what we saw was that the World Bank recently summarized estimates from market forecasters that the United States may be the only country that will leave the pandemic with higher GDP than pre-pandemic projections had estimated. It's an enormous success, and that is GDP will actually be higher as a result or after COVID and on response to COVID. You say that some of the fiscal policy interventions like the American Rescue Plan, stimulus checks, et cetera, played a role in that outcome?
Oh, yes, I think so. The forecast of many is that we will be, by the middle of next year, we'll be above the prior trend, not the prior level, but the prior growth trend, which is an incredible achievement. And I attribute it to the CARES Act and the fiscal policy that went so far, so fast. I think we'll in history get a lot of credit.